Good to see everybody this afternoon, this evening. Appreciate you being here. Let's sing number 482. Before we have a Bible study. 482. Owen? Okay. 482. You look lonely over there, buddy. 482. Bobby, would you lead us in prayer to sing this hymn? Let's all sing together. Oh, Oh, listen to our wondrous story, counted once among the Lord. Yet one came down from heaven's glory, saving us from awful woe. Who saved us from eternal doom, God's Son upon earth. What did he do? Where is he now? In heaven interceding. No angel could his place have taken. Highest of the high, no he. The loved one on the cross forsaken was one of the Godhead three, who saved us from eternal doom, God's Son upon the. What did he do? Where is he now? In heaven interceding. Will you surrender to this Savior, to his scepter humbly bow? You too shall come to know his favor. He will save you now. Who saved us from eternal doom, God's Son upon the. What did he do? Where is he now? In heaven interceding. All right. Come to the end. John. John chapter number 21. Next week, Lord willing, we'll go to Mark. See what Mark has to say. John 21, verse 1 says, After these things, Jesus shewed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and on this wise shewed he himself. There were together Simon Peter, and Thomas called Didymus, and Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and two other of his disciples. Simon Peter said unto them, I go fishing. They say unto him, We also go with thee. They went forth and entered into a ship immediately, And that night they caught nothing. And when the morning was now come, Jesus stood on the shore. But the disciples knew not that it was Jesus. And Jesus said unto them, Children, have ye any meat? They answered him, No. And he said unto them, Cast the net on the right side of the ship, and ye shall find. They cast therefore now, they were not able to draw it for the multitude of fishes. Therefore the disciple whom Jesus loved saith unto Peter, It is the Lord. Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he girded his fisher's coat unto him, for he was naked, and did cast him into the sea. And the other disciples came in a little ship, for they were not far from the land, but as it were 200 cubits, dragging the net of fishes with them. And as soon as they were come to the land, they saw a fire of coals, and there and fish laid thereon, and bread. Jesus said unto them, Bring up the fish which ye have now caught. David, do you want to go to 11 for us? Sandra?
Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land full of great fishes, 153. And for all there were so many, yet was not the net broken. Jesus said unto them, Come and dine. And none of the disciples thus asked him, Who art thou? Knowing that it was the Lord. Jesus then cometh to take the bread and giveth them, and fish likewise. This was now the third time Jesus showed himself to the disciples after he had been risen from the dead. So when he dined, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Joseph, lovest thou me more than these? He said unto the gatekeeper, Thou knowest that I love thee. He said unto him, Feed my lambs. He said unto him again the second time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? He said unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He said unto him, Feed my sheep. He said unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved, because the Lord said to him the third time, Lovest thou me? He said to him, Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee. Jesus said to him, Feed my sheep.
Verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou wast young, thou girdest thyself with waterless sweater, thou wouldest. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee, and carry thee whither thou wouldest not. This spake he, signifying by what death he should glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said unto them, Follow me. Then Peter turned about, and seeth the disciple whom Jesus loved following, which also leaned on his breast at supper, and said, Lord, which is he that betrayeth thee?
Peter standing and said to Jesus, Lord, what shall this man do? Jesus said unto him, If thou wilt, and he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. Then went this saying abroad among the brethren, that disciple should not die. Yet Jesus said not unto him, He shall not die, but if thou wilt, and he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? This is the disciple which testified on these things, and wrote these things, and we know that his testimony is true. And there are also many other things which Jesus did, which if they should be written, every one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the book which should be written.
All right, very good. Thank you. Question number 1. What is another name for the Sea of Tiberias? Tiberias, huh? What is another name for the Sea of Tiberias? Verse number 1 says the Sea of Tiberias. Galilee, yeah. We know that they were in Galilee. That's where Jesus said that he would meet them or where he told them that he would meet them after his resurrection. He had previously met them twice, according to the accounts of John. There are other accounts of other times that Jesus met other disciples. So this is not necessarily just saying that there were only 3 occasions, but this is the third time, according to John's Gospel, that he met with specifically the disciples or the apostles, at least some of the apostles. So that's what that's talking about there. So Galilee and Tiberias are the same bodies of water, just different names depending on location and what group of people we're talking about. Who suggested going fishing? Peter. Yeah. What was Peter's occupation? He was a fisherman. So Was it wrong for Peter to go back to fishing after Jesus had died and been resurrected? No.
If you're baptized, you can't quit eating. You can't quit the job.
All right. So there's not anything indicated by this that they had done anything wrong. And the fact that they were going fishing, they still had to maintain a livelihood. Sometimes you think about once you've been called by Jesus that's the only responsibility you have, but a lot of the responsibilities that you have entail taking care of all the different aspects of life as well. That is a part of Christianity. So there was nothing in and of this fact that they went fishing that was wrong. Okay. I'm all for it. One of the things we can look at, how many men were here at this particular time? How many? You have verse number 2, Simon Peter, that's 1. You have Thomas called Didymus, that's 2. You have Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, that's 3. The sons of Zebedee, how many sons of Zebedee were there?
2.
Who were they? James and John, that's 5. And 2 other disciples. We don't know particularly who these 2 other disciples were. I read some things where they speculated on that, but it really doesn't matter. There were 7 total of the apostles who had gone fishing at the suggestion of Peter. Number 3, what were the results of the fishing trip? Verse number 3. Called nothing. All right, so this was the way that Peter made his livelihood. This is the way that John made his livelihood. This is the way that James made his livelihood. So they were working at their occupation. And so can we draw a conclusion from the results of this particular endeavor here as far as your occupation is concerned? Sometimes it's not quite, or doesn't quite turn out the way that we would like for it to, or we expect it to. That's just a part of life. They had been called by Jesus. They were Jesus' apostles. But that didn't automatically mean that they were going to be successful in every endeavor in life. And so we need to understand that a part of life is dealing with those things that are setbacks or don't work out the way that we want them to work out, even though we are a Christian and would like for things to turn out well. Number 4, when Jesus appeared on the shore, was he recognizable? He was not recognizable. They were a good ways off as far as that goes, about the length of a football field outside. It was still early morning. They had fished all night, and so they didn't recognize who he was, either because of the distance or the darkness or whatever. But it was not anything miraculous in this respect, I don't think. Number 5, what directions did Jesus give the fishermen? Verse number 5. Told them to do something. All right, so he told them to cast not on the other side, but on the right side. So they had been fishing all night. You think that they had only been fishing on the left-hand side of the boat? I've seen quite a few fishermen. If they don't get one somewhere, they're going somewhere else and try it. They drive down halfway down the lake to try to find something. So we know that they had already previously tried, or we can surmise probably that they had tried on the right-hand side of the boat at that previously in that night. But they were on the left-hand side of the boat working at that time trying to catch fish when Jesus spoke to them. All right, so 100 yards off, he must have had to yell a little bit, raise his voice just a little bit, I would imagine, to get their attention. Number 6, can we learn anything from the results of the draw of the fish? I think we kind of just discussed that one. Probably got a little ahead of ourselves on the discussion of that. Number 7, who first acknowledged that it was Jesus on the shore? No, John, disciple whom Jesus loved, or let's see, number 7. Therefore, the disciple whom Jesus loved, verse number 7. So we understand, based upon our study of John, John was speaking of himself there. He was the first one to recognize Jesus. Number 8, explain that he was naked. Verse number 7.
He was not totally naked. I don't think it was they showed it up. He had his fisher's coat. Where his fisher's coat? Oh no, I guess he was.
I think you're probably right the first time. It does not say, but as a rule, they had an outer garment that they put on, and he'd taken that off. He probably had on some kind of shorts of some sort or something like that, working not completely in the book. But naked is a term that we look at, and we think that naked means completely without clothes. But the idea behind this and how they dressed was not completely naked. Naked meant that they were down to their skivvies or whatever. So you can be naked and not totally naked is kind of the point that is being made here. He recognized that he had some other clothes that he needed to put on before he went to see Jesus. Number 9. What had been prepared for the disciples?
Fire, coal, their own fish.
Fish and bread. It was breakfast, basically. Yeah. Jesus had made the fire. We don't know exactly how it was done or what was done there, but Jesus had prepared for them a meal. They worked all night. They had not eaten. They had not had a meal. And so Jesus inquires about them and has this prepared for them on the side of the sea when they get there. What was to be done with the fish that were caught? All right. Well, there was 100. Huh? Yeah. Well, evidently, from the way I read it, or what it looks like that there was a fire built. There was fish on it. There was bread on it. There was food there for them to eat. He just told them to add to it. Is what it looks like to me. I don't believe that they added all 153 fish to that. Looks to me like there was probably some time involved in all of this that was going on. It takes a little while to clean and cut up and prepare fish and then cook it. So this was not just something that happened just immediately, but this was a period of time that Jesus was with them and they were going through the process. They went through the process of coming in the shore, bringing the fish on the shore, counting the fish, putting them on the fire, having the meal. So this was not just a brief encounter right here, but Jesus spent some time with them in this whole process. It was a fellowship type of situation here with Jesus and his disciples in the area of work where they normally labored. So Jesus was participating with them, not necessarily in the work, but as a part of the fellowship going through that process. Number 11, what was different on this occasion from the first 2 appearances of Jesus to his disciples by John? That's found in the previous chapter 20, verses 19 and 26. When Jesus met them before, in chapter 20, verse 19, what's that say?
Well, the thing that's obvious difference is that there were more of them the first 3 times.
Okay.
This time was only
Yeah. We have 7 disciples were there on this occasion. The other time there were more in the upper room or in the room when they were there. So that's one difference right there. What's verse 19 say? John 20.
Oh, shit.
I didn't read it. Verse 19. Chapter 20, verse 19.
The same day, and left evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews. Jesus came and stood in the midst of them, saying unto them, peace be to you.
All right, so on this particular occasion, what day was it? First day of the week. All right, verse number 26, what's it say?
After 8 days, again, the disciples were within. Thomas with them, continued Jesus, the door had been shut, stood in the midst and said, peace be unto you.
What day of the week was this? David said, but this was the first day of the week. Again, 8 days. They included that day. John included that day, so being 8 days, which would have been 7 days for us. Count that Sunday, next 8 days, it would be the next Sunday. Count the Sunday, Jewish calendar. So both occasions in John chapter 20 was the Lord's Day that they got together with Jesus. On this occasion, it wasn't the first day of the week. This was during the week when they were working and doing whatever they did during the week. So it was two different types of settings. Most of the time people see getting together with Jesus on the first day of the week, worship and that sort of thing. Then the rest of the week is kind of where we do our work, and that doesn't always include Jesus. I think this kind of indicates that Jesus is a part of the situation, no matter where we're at, whether it be church or work or whatever. Just something that kind of struck me as far as that goes. Any comments about that? Yeah, they were inside the house for fear of the Jews as a security reason. This time they were kind of they didn't really care. They were out in the open, didn't have to worry. So there was a completely different atmosphere altogether in that respect. And so, number 10, 12. Number 10 or 12. We'll try 12. What question did Jesus ask Peter? Verse number 15. We all know that question. All right. Lovest thou me more than these? What are these? Anybody know? Think so? You sure?
No.
Okay.
Disciples.
All right. Could be the activity that you're involved in. Could have been the disciples that you're with. Could have been the fish. Could have been a lot of different things we don't know for sure. But what the question implies is what? You fill in the blank with whatever it is. What is the purpose of the question? What's your priorities? Absolutely. You can fill in the blank with anything you want to, and we can fill in the blank with anything we want to, and we have to answer that question. Lovest thou me more than these? Where does Jesus fit into our priorities on a daily basis? You love him more than your job. You love him more than your recreation. You love him more than your best friend. You love him more than husband or wife, even as far as that goes, or son or daughter, grandchild. Jesus has to have first priority in our lives no matter what. And we explained or talked about the first part of it, that we have obligations in life, and a part of Christianity is fulfilling those obligations to those people who we are responsible for or responsible to. That's a part of Christianity, but that responsibility cannot supplant Jesus Christ in the list of importance in our priorities and the things that we do. And so I think this is the gist of what this particular chapter is trying to get across, or John's trying to teach us, that Jesus Christ is the priority no matter what. All right? So he asked him, lovest thou me more than these? What was Peter's response to Jesus' question? Okay, yeah, he was grieved, but that was after the third question. I was trying to kind of look at it from the standpoint of what was his response at first. When Jesus first asked him, what did he say? Of course I love you. You know that I do. Yes. Let's see. The next question says, what were the directions given to Peter by Jesus? All right. So with the ability to reason and draw the conclusion on what's a priority or what is the priority in our life, then we can order our lives and what we need to be doing. Jesus gave the directions here on what he needed to be doing if he truly loved him. That was to feed his lambs or feed his sheep. Was there any difference between lambs and sheep? I don't think that there necessarily is in respect to what Jesus' point was. Feeding the lambs or sheep. What are lambs and sheep? Jesus' directions. People, specifically Christians, yeah. So the question was, do you love me? Yes, I love you. Feed my sheep. Take care of them. Jesus is going at Peter, and I don't know if that's probably the right way to put it, but when Jesus was in the upper room and had said that they would come and get him, that he would be forsaken, who spoke up on that occasion said, "Not me. Though all men forsake thee, I will not forsake thee." Who said that? Judas betrayed him, but who? Peter told him, Jesus point blank. Everybody else will, but not me. I'm not going to. Now Jesus is confronting Peter, and having denied him, and he's saying, "Do you love him?" Jesus knew what had happened. Peter knew what had happened. He was very emphatic about it, very confident about his ability to stand with Christ, and very bold and brash about the fact that he wasn't going to do it. And we know that he fell down. Now Jesus comes back and confronts him, knowing, and Peter knows what it is. So is Peter going to be quite as bold and as brash about his ability to stand for Christ? If you've fallen down once, are you willing to just stand up and say, "I can do this"? Most of the time we have a little bit of a hesitation or a humbling because of our mistakes, and we reevaluate and do whatever we need to do to fortify our faith or strengthen ourselves. But we recognize that there is the potential for falling or not making it, and so we're not quite as confident or overconfident, I guess might be a better way to look at it. So in this discussion, we have to look back at that particular situation with Peter and see what Jesus is confronting Peter with, is the idea of him knowing that he had messed up and let the Lord down earlier when he said he wouldn't do it. 15. What was the response of Peter to the continual questioning of Jesus? All right, Sister Sue, you got that one? He was, what does it mean to be grieved? Sad would be a part of it, huh?
He questioned whether their love for.
All right, well, he was questioned, but it says he was grieved. What is the feeling of grief? Hurt? You say something? Sadness. All right, so I also get from behind the word a little bit of the idea of tension. It's building up in it. He's I do. I'm sure I do. You know it. Why are you asking me? And just, stop. Please don't ask me again. You know that I love you. So it was causing some anxiety in his spirit because Jesus was asking him over and over and over. How many times did Peter deny Jesus? 3. How many times did Jesus ask Peter if he loved him? 3. I wonder if there's any connection to that. You never know. But he was emphasizing the fact that it's something that we have to evaluate on a continuous basis. And it's easy to say yes. Peter just off the cuff responded to what Jesus said when he was in the upper room. Here he's having to sit back and think a little more seriously about what that entails. And that's what Jesus wants him to think about. Yes, you love me. Here's what you have to do. Are you willing to do what is required? Huh?
Feed your sheep.
Feed my sheep.
What does that tell us?
Well, it says that Peter had to feed his sheep.
If we love the Lord, we will feed the sheep.
Yeah, we'll be participating in the growth and admonition of the church in some form or fashion.
In my Bible, the second time it's got 10 my sheep. First time it says feed my sheep, the next time it's got 10 my sheep. Is that changed in
In mine it says, the first one it says feed my lambs, and the second one says feed my sheep. It says feed on all of them. But I think it was Albert Barnes who said that there was a different word used in the second time, which the first one was more of a educating, and the other one was more like what a shepherd does to guide and move it. Yeah. So there were two different ideas about it. And one in the sense of feeding, and another in the sense of caring for how they would move them from one place to another and put them in the pen and that sort of thing. So there were two different ideas behind that. And there is more involved to it than just teaching somebody the Bible as far as helping people out, tending and guiding. So, Peter had a great responsibility to the church with his position, but we all have a great responsibility to the church in our position, no matter where we're at. We need to learn that those two things are not exclusive to Peter in the sense that only he had to do it, but we have responsibilities to the church as well. Number 16, what was Jesus telling Peter in verse 18? Verse 18 says,
He got old. He couldn't put his clothes on.
is that what he was telling him?
That's where you are now.
Yeah, verse 18. Verily, verily, I say to you, when thou wast young, thou girdest thyself and walkest whither thou wouldest. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee, carry thee whither thou wouldest not go, or wouldest not. What is Jesus telling Peter? He ain't going to be able to dress himself? Okay, what? He's definitely telling him he's going to get old. I guess that's better than telling him you're going to die. The focus on the clothing or girding thyself is not really the important point of all this. The point is that Peter, when he was younger, had the freedom to come and go and do as he pleased. As he got older, because of the obligations of the church and his Christianity, he was going to be bound in a lot of different ways. One, bound by the gospel to do the things that were required of him to account for his responsibilities to the church. But also, in that day and age, in being a Christian, also calls for persecution, being imprisoned or whatever it may be, and there's some indications of that. If you look at verse 19, it says, this signifying by what death he should glorify God. So the point being here that Jesus is asking these questions. I think I've got this in the next question, so it might wait till we get down there. But he was telling him the way that he was going to die, according to verse number 19. It was going to be one where it was not an easy death, but he was going to be subjected to persecution, being bound, forced to go from here or wherever it was, because of his acknowledgement of his love for Jesus Christ. What more detailed instruction was given to Peter in verse number 19? Alright, so we could go back to the teachings of Jesus in Luke or Matthew's account, either one. If we're going to be a disciple, we have to deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow Jesus. So that's the instruction that Jesus was giving Peter at this time, that there was going to have to be a denial made of the things that you wanted. And we don't know how much fish Peter did after this, as far as that goes. It was his livelihood. Maybe he had a business and had people that could run the business. I don't know. His main thrust of his life, his main goal was to make sure that the church was taken care of to the best of his ability, and that's what Jesus was trying to emphasize towards him. And that's the next question. What is the theme of the discussion with Peter, verses 15 through 19? 15 is where he asked him the first time, do you love me more than these? And 19 is where he says, follow me. So the thrust of the whole discussion there that Jesus has with Peter, it's not about the fish, it's not about the fishing, it's not about anything other than following him and being able to do whatever is necessary to put Jesus first in his life. Number 19. What question did Peter first ask Jesus in verse 20? All right. That's yeah. Huh? Then, let's see, verse 19, verse 20. Then Peter, turning back, seeth the disciple whom Jesus loved, following, which also leaned on his breast at supper, and said, Lord, which is he that betrayeth thee? The way I read it is that Jesus had finished discussing with him, telling him what he had to do. Then Peter looks around at John. He sees John, and he wants to know, the first question, it was not necessarily about John. He saw John, but then he asked the question, who is it betrayeth thee? Which seems to me a little bit of a strange question. At this point, he was in the garden. Who led the assault to arrest Jesus? Judas. Peter was right there, Judas. He drew the sword and cut off Malchus' ear. He knew who the leader was. He saw Judas betray Jesus with a kiss. Why would he ask this question? I don't know.
Is he answering this question, or is he describing what John did?
What John did?
Yeah, what John did at Last Supper.
You got it. I don't have to draw cross reference on mine. You got something?
13, some put on another doubting his faith. Now they're believing that Jesus was holding disciples who Jesus loved. So Peter therefore beckoned to him that he should ask who his faith. And he didn't line up his dress said to him, Lord, who is it? And Jesus answered, is he whom I disciple? And I did it. And he did disciple, he was Judas Iscariot, son of Simon.
Okay, so the question is not directed at this particular time as to who it was, but it was pointing back to the time when he had. It's the adjective in a phrase of John's, what it amounts to. It's saying back in John 13 that Peter looked back and saw John, who laid on Jesus' breast, whom he had asked who it was betrayed. So it was not a correct question at this time, who is it that betrays thee, but that's a part of the description of John there. That makes sense? He's not asking Jesus who it is betrayed because he knew who it betrayed, but he is making reference to or giving the definition is not the right word, but explaining who it is that laid on Jesus' breast. What that phrase means to say. So that clears it up for me as far as why I would ask that question. He wasn't asking that question. He was using that to describe a time previously when he was talking to John about who would betray Jesus. All right. So you can mark that question out. Number 20. How is Peter displayed like most people? Verse 21. You're not going to find this written exactly in the text, but it's something that we can kind of draw a conclusion from. What had Jesus just done to Peter? Did he put him on the spot? Yeah. You love me? You love me more than these? You love me more than these? And what does Peter turn around and do?
Lord, you know everything.
No, he didn't do that. Well, he did do that, but that's not what his reaction was. The first thing out he did was, yeah, let's look over here at this guy now. Let's take the light off me and let's think about John. Yeah. And that's how we are to a great degree, you know. We don't want the light shined on us. We want to know or look at the other people and what they're doing, what they're supposed to be doing or what they're not doing. And so Peter's a lot like the rest of us in that respect. What about this guy over here? What was done to the statement of Jesus concerning John's future? Verse 23.
His statement was kind of,
Not a bit finished.
well, Jesus' statement was about that at the time.
Yeah.
Change the wordings.
Yeah. Jesus says, if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? He's just saying, you know, that's not of any real interest to you right now in a nice way. You know, that's not something we need to be thinking about or talking about or that I'm going to even tell you right now. But what did they determine that Jesus said to him? He'll be here.
What I said.
Yeah. He's going to live forever is what went around. And I don't know, we've played a game before a time or two where we'll start something on this side of the room and they'll say it's everybody will get it. come back to the very end, it would be something completely different from what it was before. We have a tendency or the ability to twist things up if we're not very, very careful with our words and with what people say. So we have to pay attention. This was not something done, I don't know, as far as that was going to affect anything, because John cleared it up at the end of the book that this was not what was the situation there at all. Number 22, who is spoken of in verse 24. This is the disciple which testified of these things and wrote these things, and we know that his testimony is true. John, writing, we call that third person. Are you writing about yourself as another person out here? It was just his way of writing and saying that I'm an eyewitness to this. I've seen it, and I know it to be true. And you can trust this, what I've written here. Last question. What is the intent of what is said by John in verse number 25? Here's what is said. And there are also many other things which Jesus did, the which, if they should be written every one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that should be written. Amen. What is John saying here?
We don't have near all of what Jesus said.
Okay.
What he done or something. And he said enough to fill the whole book.
Do you mean to tell me that all Jesus did in the 33 years, it could not be written in books that the world could contain?
It should be written.
Well, I don't know. I think this is probably a hyperbole. That man's a tall. Huh? Well, it's a way of expressing something to show how big it is. It's not really necessarily in truth, but it's saying, and I want tongue-in-cheek is not the way it is, but it's said so that it emphasizes the fact. We use the phrase bigger than an elephant. You know, it may not be bigger than an elephant. It's just big, great big. That's what we're emphasizing, the fact of the size. And that's what John is doing here. He's emphasizing the fact that there's so much more to be told about Jesus in his glory and what he did and what he said and all that. That it's just we could go on and on and on and on about it. So it's not necessarily the number of the books or the size or whatever that is necessarily the fact that there's so much more that we could know, and that we'll be able to know when we're in heaven as far as that goes. So, any questions, comments? It is a great book. All right, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate your participation. Keeping me on track. There's a lot of discussion as far as that goes, is that maybe this didn't actually fit what originally part of John's book, because it has the resurrection, and then all of a sudden it goes back to something else, because the last two verses in that chapter 20 look like concluding statement of the old manuscripts. Yeah. Say me something.
No, we have to get at it. Well, we have to go back where the thing we have all on the ground.
That's what I'm.
It's good though. I like 5 minutes. Even actually, my class.
Number 67 will be our hymn of invitation here in just a minute. Number 67. It's good to be with you. Appreciate your presence. Hope that you've benefited from the study of God's Word this evening. Hope you further exercises of your week. We want to conclude our time together this evening thinking about the invitation of our Lord and our soul's eternal destiny. And I want to do that by looking at Acts chapter 27 for just a minute. Acts chapter 27, as you probably are familiar, that's the story of the shipwreck of Paul on his way to Rome. We're going to look at a specific word in there and think about it in the context of our internalization verse for the week. Our internalization verse for the week is John 15, verse 10. It says, "If you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love." I want to think about that term abide for just a minute. In Acts chapter 27, Paul and his companions and the Roman soldiers and the shipmen had been in a ship on the sea for 2 weeks in a storm. And they discovered that there's land, that they can possibly get to and be saved. And so the shipmen are devising a plan in order for them to be saved and leave the others behind. If you look at Acts chapter 27, in verse number 31, it says, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved. We have that word abide here in Acts chapter 27, talking about these men in the face of physical death, in the middle of a storm, deep sea, and the possibility of getting out alive. Thinking that they can devise a plan to get out. Paul, by inspiration and for inspiration, tells these men that unless everybody stays in this ship, nobody can be saved. And we understand that as a type of the church. When you talk about except you abide in this, you cannot be saved. Unless you stay in the church, you can't be saved. That's the principle we're talking about. Jesus used it this way when he said, if you keep my commandments, then you abide in my love. So we talk about abiding in the church. It means that we keep the commandments of the Lord and stay in his love, just like those men had to obey what Paul said and stay in that ship in order for everybody to be saved. It's a type for us to look at and understand. There's no way that a person who leaves the church, who is not a part of the church, can be saved. You have to abide in it, be in it, and you can't leave. I want us to look at the next verse in Acts 27, though, because this is what is important for us to draw from this in that respect. And verse 32 says, Then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat and let her fall off. They got the instructions from Paul about what God said in order for them to be saved on this particular occasion. You've got to stay in the boat. At that point, the soldiers recognized what had to be done. They had to cut off that one little boat that those men were going to get in and jettison. There was no more escape route there. That was the only hope that they had of getting to shore was that little lifeboat. And they jettisoned. So taking our type and applying it to us today, there comes a time, if we're going to abide in the love of God, if we're going to abide in the church, there are things that have to be cut off, put away with, done away with, finished, and do them no more. When Jesus said, if you keep my commandments, that's what he was saying. If you're going to abide in my love, you've got to get rid of some things. You can't live that way anymore. You can't do that anymore, no matter what it may be. We could describe a lot of different things in that. But most of us have in our lives heard things along the lines of what has to be put away as far as Christianity is concerned. Paul, God, through inspiration, Paul's life is teaching us the truth here that we have to abide in the church. We have to get rid of things in order to be saved. So tonight, are you in the ship of safety? Would be the first question that I would ask myself. You need to ask your ship of safety for heaven, for that eternal goal, is the church. Jesus died, paid his blood for it, so that it could be saved. Acts 2 and verse 47 says that's where the saved are. If you're not a part or in the ship, in the church, you can't be saved. That's the first thing that you have to do in order to be in the church. You have to believe, repent, confess, and be baptized. When you're baptized, Christ, God placed you in the church, and you're in a saved state. But then you must abide there by keeping the commandments. That's all the commandments. We can't pick and choose which commandments we want to keep and which ones are not so important to us. We have to keep them all. That doesn't mean that we won't sin, because we are human and God recognizes that we fail in many ways in keeping all the commandments all the time. But he devised a plan and gave us a way that we might put ourselves back in the right relationship. As long as we're striving to do what's right and do what God says and keeping the commandments, if we'll confess those things that are wrong that we've done sinfully, repent of them, and then pray God, he'll forgive us for those sins, and we can, again, know that we're in that saved state and abiding in the love of Christ. So are you in the church? Are you abiding in the commandments of Christ? And if you need to make a change in either respect, I hope that you'll do it now while together we stand while we sing.
Bring Christ's good broken life, so what I say. never no more. Blessed Savior of us all, Almighty friend, His presence shall be ours unto the end. Without them, what would be found our gathering? But with the morning grace and heaven is here. Thank you all for being here. Hope you'll be here Sunday morning at 9:30 for our Bible study hour and 10:30 for worship. Brother Doug Parks will be here to present the morning class and then also preach that morning sermon for us in our worship service. We'll have our adjusted services Sunday. We will not have a fellowship meal, but we will have our adjusted services Sunday. And then we have August 17th reserved a pavilion at a park that I can't remember the name of. Rockland Park, August 17th. They have a lot of different things you can do there. Try to have an outing with the congregation. It is handicap accessible for easy travel for many of us, including myself. So please don't be discouraged in coming there. And then, what else am I missing? It is in Hendersonville. On Old Hickory Lake next to the dam. Anything else? All right. For the day we have our closing prayer.
Our God, our Father, that comes in that life is being blessed to give us. Congregation of these blessings, you bless us, our Lord. Thank you for the word we received tonight. Father, not those that are sick or not ready to do, those that are to do not ready to return to the Lord. First of all, Father, we do the travel situation, walking with them and save our lives. Bring us all back Sunday morning, 9:30. That's Jesus' name.
Remember when
You need to take Mom Daddy with you. He wants to get home and drive No, really, I just want you to know it was on go. Yeah.